There's just so many Hugo games to go through. Well, I suppose it's time. Hello and welcome to Rob's Retro Reviews. Today we're going to be continuing with the Hugo PS1 marathon by taking a look at the 5th game in the series, Hugo Frog Fighter. This one was created and published by ITE Media, the same company that made the previous 4 games, so let's pop this in and take a look. So far in the series, Hugo has tackled the minigame compilation genre and the 3D platformer genre, and now he's going for his 3rd style of game, this time becoming a Frogger clone. It's an odd choice of game for Hugo to go for, but let's roll with it and see what it has to offer. This particular game seems to be the least popular of the Hugo games on PS1, having even less coverage online than the other games do. In fact, as of when this video was created, there were no other video reviews for this game at all on YouTube, so I think I'm actually the first person to ever take an in-depth look at this. So I'm all the more intrigued by it, just because nobody else is talking about it. The game starts with an opening cutscene which consists of Hugo and 3 Kikorians having fun around a campfire. The FMV quality is actually pretty good here, everything is bright, cartoony, and it would have appealed to kids playing the game. Unfortunately the fun doesn't last for long because they hear a boat sailing down the nearby river and they're quick to investigate. It turns out to be 2 of Don Crocco's army who are looking for something. Meanwhile, a frog eats a firefly and burns his mouth, which is perhaps the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life. And then the crocodiles steal the frog and laugh evilly. Hugo then seemingly has an idea to rescue the frog and walks out of the frame, thus ends the only cutscene in the entire game. Yep, you heard that right, this cutscene is the only one in the entire game, so if you're expecting more story, forget about it, there's no more to be found past this point. We're then greeted by quite an impressive selection of language options, and then the main menu, which is the exact same menu they've used for the past 2 Hugo games. So, as we all know by now, there's nothing to see here. Well, actually, having said that, the level codes have been shortened for this game, so I suppose that's nice of them. The actual game works in exactly the same way Frogger does. The game takes place from a top-down angle and you use the D-pad to move left, right, up and down. You're locked to grid-based movement, so you can't move diagonally or pull off any other fancy manoeuvres. There's no other inputs at all, so it's extremely simple. The objective is to collect a key to make a caged frog appear and then go over to the cage which makes a bigger key appear, which upon collecting that will make the level exit appear. So you're constantly working your way around the levels back and forth past different moving obstacles. The controls are actually pretty responsive. There's no delay and Hugo jumps where you want him to, which is good, but at the same time it would have been a bit pathetic if by this point they hadn't mastered basic movement controls like this. If you die by falling into water or pits, or by getting hit by the various enemies or traps, you'll lose one of your 4 lives and be reset to the start of the stage. You won't actually lose any of your progress though, so if you've saved a frog, you will still have saved it upon death. However, if you lose all of your lives and get a game over, the level will completely reset and you'll have to start again, which is a good punishment for dying without being too strict. When you die, you instantly spawn back at the start of the level too, so there's no loading to be done, which I appreciate. An issue that I noticed right from the start of the game is that it's sometimes not obvious enough what you can and can't jump on. So for example, I don't think it's clear enough that you can jump on these bubbles. A well-designed game would have started with a level where there was a straight line and a bubble in the middle of it to teach you that you can use them as makeshift platforms, but here, it just seems to expect you to already know this information. Another problem that's noticeable right from the start of the first level is that it's a bit awkward to jump onto moving platforms because of how your movement is grid-based, but the movement of everything else around you seems to move freely. So you might jump onto a log and clearly land on it, but sink straight through and die because not enough of the log was in your grid area when you landed. It's a bit difficult to explain, but I hope that makes sense. You know, why is this game called Frog Fighter when you're not even fighting frogs? I guess you're fighting for the frogs? Either way, it's a confusing title and I'm not a fan of it. On to the next level. The second level is another swamp-themed level. The themes do eventually change though, don't worry, and it only takes 3 levels for it to do so, which is cool because it keeps things visually interesting. I found myself jumping through solid objects a lot in this level, which was annoying, and it actually resulted in me getting a game over, but because the levels are so short, this isn't too much of a problem. Still though, it's irritating when you die because of something that isn't your fault. Something else I noticed in this level is that this game actually has music. The reason I didn't notice is because you come to expect games to feature music, but for the Hugo series this is worth mentioning due to there having been quite a few games now which didn't bother with it. There's a timer at the top right of the screen and I have no idea why. There's no time trial mode and no time you're supposed to be beaten to get a bonus or anything, so it seems to just be there for literally no reason. Come to think of it, why doesn't this game have any additional modes or challenges? It would have been a perfect game to have time trials, multiplayer, challenges, optional collectibles, hidden areas and puzzle rooms, but there's none of that to be found here. Let me remind you that this game was released in 2001, so there's no reason for this stuff to have not been included. The only other thing I'll say at this point is that the game is actually probably a little bit too difficult for its target audience. I imagine kids would have had a hard time even with these early levels because of how complicated they can get, combined with the sometimes awkwardly timed jumps you need to do. I would think a lot of kids would just give up with this and play something else, to be honest. You know what? I've only just thought. Where are Scylla and Don Grotto? They're the series' main villains and they've not even been introduced into the game yet. Weird. The third level gets quite a lot more complicated, requiring you to work out that you need to get onto the log on the right of the screen and then work out how you're supposed to do that. The level design for this Hugo game in general is actually probably the best we've seen in the series up until this point. There's nothing more to really say about this level that hasn't already been said, so let's move straight on to level 4, which takes place in... Question mark. Well, I guess we should see what this has got in store for us. What is this? Why are we now in the depths of hell itself? And why is the music so goddamn creepy? I think what makes this even worse is that there's absolutely no context given as to what's going on. I've not skipped a cutscene or a transition or anything. This literally just comes out of nowhere. There's been nothing like this in any of the past Hugo games either. They've all been grounded in locations you would see in real life, so it just makes it all the more strange, and kind of creepy, that this was just thrown in here. Another scary detail here is that Hugo isn't even rescuing frogs in this level, he's just trying to escape alive. It's as if he knows he's not supposed to be here. I think we had better move on before we get cursed or something. Level 5 introduces us to a new theme. The next 3 levels all take place in a jungle, but the great thing about this is that as well as it being visually different, the themes also introduce new level gimmicks. So for the first time in the Hugo series, the levels actually feel different to each other. The music also changes, which reinforces the difference between the swamp levels and these new ones. Props to the game developers for finally having learnt the basics of game design. You'll also now need to collect 2 frog cages before the exit key appears, so there's a bit of a difficulty curve as the game progresses too. The fast moving spider enemies are actually quite interesting, and it can be a bit tense trying to predict where they're going, outrun them, and find safe spots. Level 6 basically expands these mechanics, but this time a big spider rotates in the middle of the level as you go about completing it. I'm not really sure why it's there, it didn't kill me and it doesn't move or anything, so it's just a bit random. An issue with this level is that when you start it, it's not clear where Hugo is on the screen. There's so much movement and it can be difficult to pinpoint where you are. They should have made the starting area more clear so your eyes moved straight there as soon as the level appeared. In level 7 the big spider returns, but this time it shoots a projectile at you. It didn't do that in the last level. It's not fair to expect me to know what's going on if you just throw in random elements at me like this. If the spider doesn't shoot in the first level, it shouldn't shoot in the second level, at least not without first acknowledging that it has the capability of doing that. For God's sake. For every step forward this game takes, it takes 2 steps back. I wonder what's in the next level. Oh God, no!
Okay now, no time to lose. Let's get this game started. Okay now, no time to lose. Timber jumping, timber jumping, timber jumping, timber jumping.
That was weird. The next level takes place in a crystal grotto, and now all of a sudden this crystal golem's dancing around and I'm just expected to accept what I'm looking at and get on with the game without questioning any of this. What am I even looking at here? There's no context given for any of this, and the whole game feels incredibly disjointed because of this. I mean, the whole point of the game is to rescue frogs, and there hasn't even been given a reason as to why I'm doing that. All I'm asking is that the game gives me a little bit of information. Is that too much to ask? You know what? Let's take a step back from this a minute. Why wasn't Hugo turned into a frog by Scylla at the start of the game? This would have introduced us to the main villain, it would have given us a reason to be rescuing the other frogs, and it would have given Hugo a reason to be jumping around everywhere rather than simply walking. If I thought of this after one playthrough, then why didn't the developers think about it while they were making the game for God knows how long? Honestly, there's no point in me going through this level by level anymore. It's all the same, so I'm just going to summarise what I thought of the whole Crystal Grotto area. It's a little bit annoying how you can't quite trust when enemies are and aren't going to hit you. Like here for example, I feel like the bat should be hitting me, and here I feel like it shouldn't have hit me. Yet in both examples, the opposite happens. There's also these lasers which turn on and off, but at the start of the level it's not quite obvious that this kills you. There's so much going on around the screen that you can't concentrate on individual elements like that. It's not too much of a problem because when you die to it once, you obviously know it's there, but still, I feel like this is enough of a problem to make it worth mentioning. I actually think this whole area has a good main gimmick with avoiding the moving lasers, especially in the third level with the spinning lasers in the middle which you have to take cover from. There continues to be quite a good difficulty curve here, and it's building at a good rate throughout the game. The only issue with the difficulty is that I think the game was a little bit too hard to start off with, and could have done with another set of levels right at the beginning to give you a feel for the game before throwing you in at the deep end. We then have another one of these terrifying and completely random levels. Despite being so out of the blue, I actually think that these levels are quite interesting. They force you to keep moving and make quick decisions by making it so that you can't see the path in front of you and it only appears once you've stepped on the first bit of the path. But then when you've stepped on that platform, you have a short amount of time before it falls, so you've got to keep moving forward and work your way around a maze that you can't actually see. It's a good idea, and it's implemented quite well too. The last selection of levels are set in a factory, and the gimmick here is that there are different heights for you to go up and down. For a while I was perplexed by this first level until I found out you could go under this pipe. This should have been made slightly more obvious, to be honest. The next level is set inside the factory and is probably the most annoying level in the game. It's not like it's a bad idea. The basic gimmick with this is that you need to stand on spinning cogs, which makes it more difficult to get in the right position for jumps. But it just outright doesn't work properly sometimes. It doesn't look like you can jump from this platform to this spinning gear, yet you can easily make this jump. However, then in other sections of the level, it looks like you can easily make jumps, but you end up falling through platforms and down into holes. It's actually quite annoying, and it's all down to the fact that you move in a grid, but the environment doesn't, meaning that it's way too difficult to be able to judge your jump distance properly. Finally, we have the 14th level, which is kind of a boss fight against this crocodile. Whether this is supposed to be Don Croco or not, I'm not sure. If there had been a cutscene or any plot details given to me whatsoever, then I might be able to tell you. The idea behind this level is pretty good. You have to make your way to the middle of the level where the crocodile will chase you and kill you if he touches you, and you have to make your way to several switches placed around the outside of the level to reach the exit. The main issue is that there's not enough feedback for when you hit a switch. It's not obvious enough what the switch is actually doing, and it could leave you thinking that it hasn't actually done anything, because it's made a platform move but you didn't see it activate. Upon reaching the final switch, you trap the crocodile in a cage, and he suffers the exact same fate he placed upon all the frogs that you've rescued. The game then just ends. There's no last cutscene, and there's nothing to say that Hugo was successful in rescuing all the frogs. There's nothing to tell us what happens to the crocodile after we catch him in the cage. But what we do get is a fancy congratulations screen. Hugo Frogfighter is a bit of an oddball. Why the developers decided to randomly make a Frogger clone, I have absolutely no idea, but it actually kind of works, and they do have some genuinely interesting ideas in terms of the design of the levels. The controls are good and responsive, and it has music, which are both positives for a Hugo game. The issues are that there's almost no story or cohesion at all. One minute you'll be in a swamp, the next minute you'll be in space, and the next minute you'll be in a jungle, and there's nothing that ties all of that together. It makes the game feel unfinished and rushed. Judging it as an actual game released in 2001 rather than only as a Hugo game, it's really not very good. It needed so much more content to make it worth playing, and it isn't original or particularly fun. It seems like a low-effort game created purely to make a bit of money just using the Hugo name and the gameplay of Frogger, and that really is a shame. At least with the previous Hugo games I could sense that the developers were trying, but here I'm not really getting that. This game came out in 2001, that's the same year as Conker's Bad Fur Day, Halo, Metal Gear Solid 2, Silent Hill 2, Grand Theft Auto 3, and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3. I hope that puts it into perspective just how dated this game was, even when it was first released. I actually struggled to give this game a score, simply because I feel like aspects of it are better than any Hugo game we've seen previously, but other aspects of it are also perhaps some of the worst too. It's a difficult one, but taking everything into consideration, I'm giving Hugo Frog Fighter a 3 out of 10. When it comes down to it, it's a Frogger clone, and why would you want to play this when you could play the original Frogger or one of its sequels? It doesn't have any character or charm, and it's got absolutely no replay value in the slightest. It's incredibly short, and there's no reason to ever play this over any game released at the same time or before. Hugo, you just can't learn, can you? You've had some good ideas throughout your 5 games, but you just can't seem to bring it all together in one package. Never mind, there is still one game left, maybe that one will surprise us. Thanks for watching my review. If you enjoyed it, give it a like, leave a comment and subscribe for more reviews coming soon. Have you ever played Hugo Frog Fighter? If so, let me know what you thought to it. In fact, let me know what you think to any of the Hugo games for that matter. It's always interesting getting another perspective. Anyway, until next time, bye!